Hello and welcome to National Debate. I'm Madhavdas G. The sudden 300 feet altitude drop of AI 2379 flight from Phuket to New Delhi has opened a Pandora's box in India's civil aviation sector. The incident has once again sparked a conversation on several fronts. Most importantly, the safety checks that are conducted on those who are responsible for flying the planes, the pilots. The pilot in command on board that plane may have failed the dope test, but one cannot also ignore the fact that the pilot in question was administered a dope test only after the incident took place. Had this incident never happened, India perhaps may have never known that you had a dope pilot who was flying 145 passengers and crew in Indian skies. And worse, the stricter doping measures that are now being introduced may have never happened. While the debate over stricter norms continues, the focus is also very much on the aircraft's massive technical issues. The post-flight report suggests that at least 3 hydraulic system failures took place. There were flight control elevator faults and emergency exit warnings. Certainly, any pilot facing several alarms at once is under immense pressure. And yet, the pilots managed to land the plane safely after the 300-foot dip in altitude. Sources tell Times Now that the preliminary probe is also expected within 2 weeks. So what's behind the sudden altitude dip? Why did the 145 passengers and crew have to go through this harrowing experience? Was it just a pilot who was under the influence of drugs alone, or was there also a massive technical fault that has to be closely examined? And is it time to strengthen India's aviation rules? That's our focus on this edition of the National Debate. Let's first take you through, in fact, our panelists who are here with us. With us is Mr. J.S. Rawat, former Joint Director General of DGCA. We have Dr. Sumit Sushilan, Chairman of Divine Air. Captain Amit Singh, aviation expert and founder of Safety Matters Foundation, is also with us. We have Wing Commander Sharat Panikar, who is, of course, a 787 retired Dreamliner pilot and, of course, an aviation expert. Captain Kabir Malik is an aviation expert. We have Dilip Chedian, image guru, also with us here in our studio. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us. Taking you through the first set of debating points that we are looking at. And the first point that we're looking at is that huge technical problems that we're talking about. Now, Airbus has sent its report, and these are the findings from the DFDR data. One is that there are multiple hydraulic systems that have temporarily been affected aboard this particular aircraft. Second, green, blue, and yellow systems were hit during this incident. The third finding, hydraulic failure led to loss of the craft's elevator. So the elevator aspect is also there. Flight controls were lost for about 4 seconds. So you're mid-air, and imagine you're a pilot who completely loses control. So apart from the elevators, the ailerons and spoilers were temporarily lost, which explains the huge difference as far as altitude is concerned. AP2 disconnected during this incident is also what we are told. So these are some of the major findings, including that the green hydraulic pressure switch issue that was also brought up in this particular report, and of course the fact that questions on hydraulic systems must be checked. So before we go across to our the issues of the pilot, let me come across to you first. Captain Amit Singh, you put out some social media posts. What does all of this mean? Because earlier you had said the possibility of hydraulic failure is less. Now that Airbus has come out and said it, do you buy this theory? And what does this really mean? Does this mean the pilots were able to recover the aircraft, or was it a fault that rectified itself? What happened?
Looking at the report, it clearly says that there was a transient failure. Transient could be an electrical failure for a microsecond, for a second, or a few seconds. So that affects the computers. Since the aircraft is highly computerized, all systems are dependent on the computers. They take a lot of sense or sensory inputs from multiple sources. So one hydraulic pump can have multiple sources of input, like the pressure switches, what the Airbus report talks about. So there are 3 pressure switches. 2 tell you that the system is working or not working, on-off switches. There are, we call it binary. And the third one tells you the exact pressure, whether it was 3000 psi or 2500. The report says the 2 switches which tell you on and off detected off position. So the Airbus report hasn't said that the switches failed or the input failed or something, but they detected. How did they detect? That is a matter of investigation. But
so wrong data could have been fed in. That's what you're saying. The computer could have been given wrong data from the various sensors or the switches, or perhaps due to power or other failures.
So the third sensor, which actually gives you the value of the pressure, 3000 psi or 2000, That is not as a part of the report. That is not a part of the report, which is the most important, critical part.
Okay, Mr. Rawat, you agree with that there has been technical failure and possibly there was wrong data that was provided to the onboard computers, because everything.
If because there's a list of number of this thing has been, there's those kind of for the one a period of 1 or 2 minutes, this kind of failures had taken place, because they're the transient failures, because it just came and then went off, because it was no actual this thing. So if this kind of this thing all the fails for a long time, then it's going to be a disaster. But it is a computer senses, and then he has given an input which was probably not correct.
Right. Let's quickly look at the next set of graphics. What actually happened in those 4 seconds where things apparently went wrong? Now, this is what we are told. There are multiple hydraulic failures that have happened. It was apparently the damping mode that possibly it went into, the load exceedances and structural inspection that perhaps occurred at that point of time. If there was a real pressure loss, we don't know what exactly happened, but both the elevators being impacted, these are the ailerons and the spoilers which are also impacted, we were told. What really happened as far as the pressure loss was concerned, and how did it impact on these particular systems? And lastly, we are also told that the 2 reservoirs of the hydraulic system showed low level on pressure loss, and this is of course contradicted in terms of what really was taking place. Let me quickly bring in also Wing Commander Sharat Panikar. Wing Commander Sharat Panikar, what do you understand of what has taken place? What possibly happened those 4 seconds that the pilots lost control and then automatically regained control? Was this just a blip? Was it a complete technical failure, or was there some kind of human error involved?
First is rule out human error at this point. Okay, what has happened out here is completely technical. You've had a loss of the green system initially. The moment the green system is gone, the other 2 systems take over. Do keep in mind that this is a fly-by-wire aircraft. There is a sharing of hydraulic load between all the control surfaces. Okay, be it the elevators, be it the ailerons, be it the rudder, be it the spoilers. There is a sharing amongst all the 3, and so adjusted that failure 1 or more, that means it could be 2, does not seriously affect the controllability of the aircraft. Now, in this specific case, what has happened is that the green system was the first to fail. So automatically, the software protocol would ensure that this load would be taken over by the other 2 systems. 4 seconds later, the remaining 2 systems also failed, followed 1 second later by the autopilot disconnecting. At the point of autopilot disconnect, the elevators, the ones that control the pitch of the aircraft, the right elevator and the left elevator were in 2 different positions, but which finally led to the aircraft pitching up at some point. What has been missed out in this report is obviously the stall warning indication and the other indications which has been missed out, because this is just a technical report from Airbus. But the moment the co-pilot, who was the pilot flying at that point in time, realized that the aircraft is pitching up, coupled with the stall warning that he's got, the first impulse is to move his side stick forward. At this point of moving the side stick forward, the ailerons themselves were in some sort of a resettling phase, in which the control input will have no effect. This was also around the time at which, followed a second or 2 later, in which he apparently must have increased the pressure forward. And this has resulted in that negative G, which has been experienced by everybody. Like in the preliminary report which the captain has put up, which is now available on social media, it says that he was standing behind the first officer when this event happened. And this negative G which happened, negative G, you must keep in mind, just to explain in layman's terms, we are all under plus 1G at this point in time, all of us. Sitting in that aircraft also, everybody is at plus 1G, flying straight and level. Okay? Following the laws of physics, if the aircraft were to pitch down, the aircraft physically is going down, but you sitting in the aircraft actually wants to go straight and level. But you can't because you're strapped into the aircraft. So you experience that little bit of that, what we call a slight amount of negative G. In normal flying, this pitch down is so gradual that it is hardly noticed, like when an aircraft commences a descent. But this being a little bit more violent, the aircraft has left its straight and level path rather abruptly, which has resulted in you being thrown up much faster. For those passengers and crew that were strapped up, it wasn't too much of a problem. But those that weren't strapped up or were walking around
suddenly hit the heads on
would
the
have gone and hit the ceiling, depending upon the amount of pitch.
But when you say that the
is coming.
pilot has moved the joystick forward, are you saying that there was some kind of pilot involvement, or is it, judging by what is before us, that it was purely because of the technical situation that sudden fall happened?
No, the technical situation was only failure of the 3 hydraulic systems in sequence, followed by the disconnection of the autopilot, which means that the aircraft at that point in time is being flown manually, right? So, and coupled with some other indications about transducers, this, that, and the other, which also possibly gave the indication of that stall warning. And possibly also a slight amount of a pitch up, which I think Amit had also brought out during one of his preliminary social media posts. If the aircraft is pitched up, coupled with the stall warning, that means the aircraft is close to or likely to exceed the stall angle of attack. And the recovery from the stall angle of attack, as is trained to all pilots, is to reduce that angle of attack until that stick shaker or that until that pitch attitude reduces below the stall.
So he was following procedure?
He was following procedure.
As for what you're saying?
Yeah. But the first push which he gave, there was no response.
Okay. So Mr. Shriram, what happens next? What happens next? Now we know what Airbus has said. Air India itself, their statements have been contradictory on day one itself. What happens in a situation like this? Because this appears to be a technical failure which many are saying is unprecedented. Where does the government come in? Where does the DGCA come in? And what happens from here on?
Definitely. After I see the situation, the first question which came to everyone's mind that why they are not landed to the nearest airport. After so many medical cases there, I think 17, 18 were injured on board. People were bleeding there, fractures multiple. But still, captain continued to fly. After knowing there are some errors they are seeing, they are trying to overcome the situation. I think now this is the time that because Tata had taken over the company, and from that time the entire public, the government have expectation that they will overcome this the bad management system, and they will come up with the new policies and all. I think this is the time where government is following the policy, government is coming up with the policies where other airlines are following it. Other airlines have no issue with the policies and to follow this. But whereas it comes to Air India, I think multiple times we saw this type of attitude of Air India. And I think we have to make more stricter policies, especially for the drugs which we found.
Yeah, I'm going to come to those 2 points. Before I go across to Captain Malik as well as Dilip Cherian, let me quickly bring in what happened inside the cockpit as well. There are some more details of what really transpired and what really were the pilots up to. Let's quickly bring up those graphics as well. One, this is what the pilot has told the AAIB. This is what sources have indicated to us. He has said that he's told his co-pilot that I will sleep for a while, and then he went on to sleep for about half an hour roughly. He used the washroom after he woke up. Then he comes back to the cockpit itself. He returned and stood behind the first officer. Remember, all this time it's the first officer who's the one flying, and that's allowed. As per the rules, pilots are allowed some amount of rest time. He then says that he fell on ground during the hydraulic failure. He then recovered, strapped himself up in the seat. The first officer was the one controlling the plane in the meanwhile, and also the crew stepped in to help when I fell. So it was the cabin crew who helped him. He says that he had consumed prescribed medication. Very important, because the 2 dope tests have failed. Now, is that the alibi that is being used? Also, very clearly, one key issue that has been announced is that this pan alert. Why was this alert delayed? Because remember, this incident has occurred near the Odisha estate 1 hour 17 minutes before landing in New Delhi. What really happened in the meanwhile? Because remember that this pan alert, which is supposed to be given at that point of time, only happens then 15 to 18 minutes before the landing. So why was it nearly an hour late is a very big question. Why didn't they, for instance, land at another airport which is much closer, as Sumit Sushilan is pointing out? These are some of the questions that arise out of the conduct of the passengers. And let me take this question across to Captain Kabir Malik. Captain Kabir Malik, what explains this? Of course, ultimately it's the responsibility of the captain, the person responsible for the aircraft. But if such a huge number of injuries have happened, 24 at last count, why did the pilot A not land in the nearest airport, and why didn't he give this pan warning when the incident happened?
Okay, I'll just going to start from the first, because some of the things which my colleagues already just forget to share with us. Many theories are there. First they said turbulence problem. Second they said the hydraulic failure. Then it's come another story. There are 3-4 stories roaming in the market now. Even the statement has given by the responsible authorities completely, useless, and they are not. It's not reliable. The what in the first, in my first, and if I'll see this is completely ignorancy, and it has happened by the inside the cockpit by the pilot, mistake of the pilot only. And secondly, if there is some distress call,
you're saying there's no hydraulic warnings.
Airbus
says there are hydraulic warnings.
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think so.
You don't think there are hydraulic failures?
No, I don't think so. Because why it's happened, I'm telling you. Listen to me. If something happened inside the cockpit, is operating by the captain, that means some negligence or ignorance by them. It is happened inside the cockpit, both of the pilots. Because first officer was not able to operate this flight. He was not in command that time. He gave the command to the first officer. Okay. So, this, I think, first officer was not as absolutely through the procedure also. When this has happened, he have to be called the distress calls to the ATC. It was not there. Secondly, if the distress call was not there, that means it was not the hydraulic failure or something else. Suddenly it had happened because of the turbulence. It is normal with the aircraft whenever you are inside the cockpit. It's normal, you can see whenever you in the sky, and happened with that turbulence, the plane shrink down maybe 100 feet, 50 feet, something has happened.
But now they're saying it's not turbulence, they're saying it's hydraulic failure. Airbus is saying it, Air India is also saying it.
In the primary, they said it was the turbulence. Because of the turbulence, that then make another story, the hydraulic failure that come to the marijuana. So many stories are there. It will become after the report will come. We will say something. We are on speculation on right now.
Okay.
But on my observation, I am saying that it was something wrong
the
inside the cockpit.
Something wrong with the pilot server. Yes. Dilip Cherian, we'll get into the right or wrong of what happened in the cockpit. There's of course flight recorders. The data recorder has out from Airbus, the data from the digital flight data recorders. But prima facie, a lot of questions about what happened inside. Was there some kind of attempted cover-up? Why didn't they land? Why didn't they inform on time? These are some very common sense questions that are arising out of this episode.
Common sense seems to be one of the things missing in a lot of the discussion on this matter. And what I am worried about is that there are cameras inside the cockpit. Okay? Now there's this whole debate in the pilot community saying, privacy, and you have to, mask people's faces. Ubers are driving with drivers being monitored every minute. You find this in train, train drivers are being monitored. Everybody is being monitored. Okay? Now, this is not the first time that we've had a really serious issue. So I'm saying that most of the recordings would have told us whether it was the pilot not paying enough attention, whether the co-pilot was acting in a trained manner or not. I'm not saying that you can establish that merely by observation of what's going on in the camera. My worry today is that some of us who are of a different generation will remember this book called Fear of Flying, which had nothing to do with planes. But the fear of flying is going to return to consumers and passengers because of this series of confusing bits of data. And Airbus putting out this report is actually quite interesting because normally airline companies, aircraft production companies, and there are only 2 of them unfortunately in the world, tend to be much more private about what they will say so early on in the process. So somewhere there's a bunch of pressures playing up, and that is what worries me. Given that it was hydraulic failure, we should be very worried when pressure of this kind is building up.
Absolutely. And in fact, let me bring in Captain Sharath on that note. Captain Sharath, Bingaban Sharath, I wanted to comment on a simple point. End of the day, Airbus bringing out this data, very rare. I agree with what Mr. Cherian is saying. The government itself has asked AAIB, look here, we want a report within 2 weeks, something the government has never done for any other incident before. Do you think that this incident, the pilot's own consumption of drugs, the second positive test that has come in, the manner in which so many passengers have been hurt, 24 of them, some of them still in hospital, I believe. I think this is an incident that is quite unlike even an accident that has taken place because the kind of alarm it can potentially cause to the flying public. You think that's what has got the authorities working, the airline company, the actual aircraft maker, the government, the regulator, all of them so active this time around?
Okay, Madhav, I'd like to make a small distinction here. What happened out here is a technical issue. The pilot consuming or not consuming drugs is not relevant at this point in time, simply because he was not flying the aircraft at that point in time. He was not going around being under the influence or otherwise putting off or manipulating any switches or doing anything of that sort. What happened out here is a technical issue. There has been a total hydraulic failure for a period of 4 seconds in which there has been no inputs at all from the pilots. The aircraft has experienced, whether it be transient or whether it be a sensor issue, it has experienced a failure for 4 seconds, followed by a tripping of the autopilot. The autopilot normally trips off when it gets inputs from various places, compares, contrasts, and says, I can't manage the situation. So it will switch off. It's the design philosophy of all autopilots. So something has happened for those 4-5 seconds in which is purely technical in nature. The pilot is not in the picture right now. The pilot who's sitting down, who is controlling the aircraft at that point in time, is a co-pilot sitting on the right side. The commander has taken his rest. He's gone behind, used the lav, come back into the cockpit at this point in time. He's not in the controls also.
Right.
Nor is he seen going around doing anything or interfering with any switches or changing positions of anything under the influence at all. So let's first examine it from a technical viewpoint, because what's happened out here is totally technical, followed by pilot inputs, in this case the first officer, who has perceived a stall and is reacted as per training. The first input of the stall, which is the movement forward to reduce the angle of attack, has resulted in nothing happening.
Right.
Because the controls are still, sort of resetting.
No, your argument stands to good reason.
Yeah.
The fear for all flyers like me is that what if this guy was actually sitting in the commanding seat?
No, that
would he
guy-
be able to control the aircraft even to the extent the co-pilot has?
No, that is a totally different issue. That's
the only fear.
Whatever he's consumed, whatever laws that he's broken, he should be held accountable, no doubt about it. But if you're looking at the issue per se, it has happened because of these failures and the first officer, in his idea, trying to recover the aircraft to safety, which has resulted in him pushing the side stick
But
forward.
that doesn't
and the
explain
negative.
why did he report this pan 1 hour later? Why didn't he land at a closer airport of people in the cabin were injured? What explains all that?
So I would like to bring out a small point. All aircraft, commercial aircraft all across the world, follow something called flight following, which is being monitored from the ground. So I suppose that in this particular case also, once this particular incident has happened, he would have been in touch with the ATC, he would have been in touch with the IOCC, there would have been discussions, because do keep in mind that all systems have recovered. The hydraulic systems, the failures, the low pressure, which normally was indicative of a system leak, miraculously has come back. Right? The autopilots are functioning, both the autopilots are functioning, all your hydraulic systems are normal, engines are normal, everything else is normal. So there is a discussion which goes on between the two pilots, that CRM that occurs, and something that we call a foredeck being carried out, the facts, options, etc., discuss it with the IOCC, and then choose the best possible line of action.
Right.
In this particular case, for whatever reason, they have not chosen to land at the closest airfield, possibly thinking that better facilities may be available in Delhi, because the time. Do keep in mind that from 36,000 feet to the time that you recover, it's still going to take you 30 minutes.
Captain Amit Singh, you agree with that perception that they could have decided for better facilities to land in Delhi? Normally when this pan etc. are announced, that means there is some huge technical fault. So the aircraft needs to hit the ground at the earliest. I mean that is what one would think of.
So technically, and what Airbus also says, in case of one hydraulic failure, no issue. We have two hydraulics. Because if one system is left, that will get overloaded. Here, if three have failed, which has never been heard, so there should be a reason for concern, not just for the pilots, but also for the ground people, that they haven't experienced such a thing. Why did it happen? Unless they were sure and they had the root cause. And now they say that the root cause is no longer present.
So all this data would be there with the IOCC. They would see real time that these three failures have happened.
So there is a data link between the operations center and all aircrafts, and all fault messages are automatically passed on to the operations center.
Mr. Rawat, you agree with that the ground staff, the IOCC, etc., the command center, they should also have actively participated in ensuring that the plane lands at the earliest?
No, there are two things. Whatever the technical data is there, that is transmitted through ACAS to the ground staff, and they have the access to it. Second thing is that what has happened after that, the passenger got injured in this thing. Now, to me, it was the responsibility of the captain to see, assess the damage, whether what is the sort of injury, and after that has to decide whether that's a serious injury, they require immediate diversion, or they can be sustained and then can continue to the next destination, Delhi, in a safe manner. So it was a call which he has taken. I think he has taken the call, and I think for that reason he must have consulted IOCC also, because it is a collective decision. The collective decision was taken to continue.
Okay.
And because there was no failure, because they have recovered, so there was no immediate reason to initiate a pan call for him.
Okay. You want to respond to that?
Yes, sir, excuse me.
Yeah.
So I want to again highlight the issue that unless you have the root cause analyzed and it is no longer present, then you can continue.
Yeah.
So if you have two engines, one engine has failed, so you will not continue endlessly.
Right.
Even though one engine starts, so you have to know what caused the engine to shut down.
Okay.
Will it again shut down? So if 3 hydraulics have failed for 4 seconds or 7 seconds, maybe half an hour later, they could fail for more.
Again. Yeah.
So unless you know the root cause and that no longer exists, how can you continue?
Yeah. Captain Sushil,
As our co-pilot said, that miraculously came back, the hydraulic power. If the same thing happened just before the landing, all the system failure, what might happen?
Exactly.
It can be a disaster.
Absolutely.
You know, they had called for a mayday immediately, you know, and there was no, like normally when we have 1 or 2 major injury on board, because I was seeing the video, the passengers were yelling because of the pain. Their hands got broken, their legs got broken, because they were yelling. That time they had not taken a call to land the nearest airport. Even when they saw the bleedings, everything was happening, they are not taken. The captain took some minutes to come to the cabin and do the counseling to not to upload all this video in any social media. Why was the reason? Air India was trying to hide the entire situation. That's why till the landing they tried to hide the situation. After landing they had given a brief to the media. It was just a turbulence. It was something, it was a management decision of Air India to hide the situation, but because of all the passengers
despite all these reports, despite several of these reports being available on the same day.
It's all because of the passengers who were aware, because of the social media, all the video got uploaded and the Air India have to come up with all this report now.
Captain Malik, you agree with that?
Let me come on the exact point what was happening inside the cockpit. After that, my fellows are said so many technical things on this incident. I'm 100% agree. But what the procedure says in this situation, we have to follow that. We have to follow that. Procedure says if something happened technically with the aircraft, you have to inform to the ATC and land nearby the airport as soon as possible. If something happened on the way of long journey, then where you will go?
Right.
Secondly, the passengers were in the pain inside the cockpit because of this disaster, turbulence inside the cockpit.
Right.
There was no humanity inside of the cockpit. Why they didn't call to the distress call to the ATC? It was not there. So everything was, you know, the speculation, and the story was they are just flowing in the market now. Absolutely wrong.
Okay. Now that we've discussed the technical aspects, let's look at the other aspect, which is the most sensational aspect of this entire story. What happened as far as this particular pilot is concerned? Let's take a look at the doping rules that exist globally. Let's also take a look at what has happened in this specific case. Now, as far as India is concerned, the rules for testing, the use of drugs when it comes to pilots are concerned, is that there's random testing. 10% of flight crew and controllers are annually tested, which means effectively once in 10 years you will be tested, because only 10% of the total workforce is actually tested in a given year. In Europe, the testing is systematic. There is drug testing that happens. There are random alcohol checks as well. And here also the focus is on rehabilitation. When it comes to drug screening, 8+ substance classes that have been given over here. Europe screens for all psychoactive drug substances. Let's bring in the next point. Alcohol, there's zero tolerance here. Alcohol 0.02 G per L blood alcohol ceiling that has been specified in Europe as well. And also, of course, when it comes to penalties, in India, rehabilitation, then a 3-year suspension, and on the third offense, a permanent cancellation. A confirmed positive in Europe is that there is immediate removal from duty when it comes to this. There's also repeat or serious cases where there is license suspension that happens. Now, this is as far as India and Europe is concerned. Let's take a look at the next set of countries that we're talking about. Here is United States, where there is random testing. Again, 25% of safety sensitive employees annually, much higher than India's 10%, which means that at least once in 4 years you're tested. Drug screen is on 5 substance classes here. There's also, of course, the alcohol, which is 0.04% BSE limit, 8-hour bottle to throttle rule that is put in place in the United States. And action, immediate removal plus mandatory evaluation of the individual that is conducted in United States. There's also Australia. Let's take a quick look at that. The testing here is random, unannounced testing of safety-sensitive workers. All of the entire workers, not just pilots, who are part of this. Drug screening happens, the broad aviation workforce coverage that is there in Australia. There's also the fact that alcohol is 0.02% BSE ceiling that is allowed in Australia as well. And of course, let's take a look at the penalties over here. First positive, immediate stand down pending medical review. Serious repeat breaches, CASA can cancel licenses, fine, prosecute the individuals who are violating it. Let's also take a quick look at UAE, because the GCC countries are also believed to be quite strict when it comes to their tolerance as far as drugs are concerned. Testing here is that there's a random breathalyzer test plus annual drug screening that happens in UAE. Let's take a look at the next aspect. At least 20% of pilots, cabin crew are tested yearly. Let's take a look at the next aspect. Alcohol, 0.02 grams or 20 mg limit over there. Penalties, alcohol positive, immediate grounding. Termination often follows in such cases. In drugs, first offense can mean prisons, fines. That too is given, of course, up to 100,000 the UAE dirhams that are mentioned over there. Let's also take a look at the dope testing protocol as it exists in India. We've already told you 10% of our flight crew are randomly tested. Let's also tell you about what further we have in terms of the dope testing protocol. Tests are conducted after safety-related incidents, as has happened in this particular case. There's also the urine sample that is tested for psychoactive substances. And the second sample, the two samples are taken. One is stored for confirmative analysis. That's what's happened in this case. The second was also positive. If the first is positive, the confirmatory test is done, and after the positive result, medical review officer is consulted in such a situation. The MRO consulted on the possibility of therapeutic treatment. Remember that there is no cancellation of license, there is no suspension. On the first offense, there's only rehabilitation. Dilip Cherian, does it make sense that in the year 2026, most countries have much stricter norms? We have strict breath analyzer norms for alcohol, but for drugs, if you're caught, no jail, no fine, no penalty, no suspension of license. You are sent for 6 months rehabilitation.
I'm happy to tell you that yesterday, Air India tested 3,000 people for drugs. Now, let's see whether we can get a quick result, because these tests only take 3 hours to actually process. Okay? Now, if India has a problem, the big problem is shortage of pilots. We need to recognize that. Therefore, we need to make sure that the testing is done regularly and the follow-up is humane, but also equally matched by the government ramping up the training and the number of pilots available. If India wants to be a Viksit Bharat at some stage, then you jolly well know that aircraft is one of those things which you'll have to man for a period of time, even with the rise of AI. So, I think that we need to look at this. The numbers are significant. The punishments may or may not be matching in many countries, but I think we need to certainly increase the level of tests and make sure, again, I'm going back, passengers must feel a sense of comfort that the people in this critical position are tested and more than likely to be safe.
All right. And Sushil, I want you to comment on the fact that why is the government sleeping so far? If breath analyzer we could implement in, I think, 2009 or 2010, why has it taken us 15 years to realize that we need to have mandatory drug testing also? In 2022, when the norms were brought in, the government at that time said that we will ramp up the testing. But nothing has happened for the last 4 years.
No. Recently, I think a couple of days back only, the Honorable Minister of Civil Aviation had announced there will be a new policy coming in, because we are just analyzing right now like what all things is mandatory now. If we have to rework on the policy.
Why now? Why does it take an incident like this for the government to do what is its job, the regulator to do what is its job?
We never experienced such type of incident earlier, like a DOP test with the positive, because pilots are responsible. DGCAs and the government makes policies. Follow-ups are always done by the airline team. They have their own pilots. They are getting trained.
But you know you're flying to jurisdictions.
Definitely.
In some countries, certain types of drugs are legal.
Yes.
That's something that everybody is aware of.
Yeah.
That's not rocket science. We all know that. So the possibility that the pilot or the crew who have gone there, they may have a 2 or 3 day layover. If they go and they consume such substances, will they be fit to fly a plane? Why is nobody in the government thinking of that?
No, of course, they are not fit to fly if you are having any type of drugs. Even like if they are having any dose for the like cough syrups also, that also comes positive when we are doing a DOP test, because that contains that substance substance. Definitely now the government is revising the entire policies and coming up with the new policies for drug tests. As our co-panelist said, recently 3,000 pilots had gone for the test. Now we are waiting for the result of that. And yes, I know that there are shortage of the pilots. So basically, government have to take a call, before taking any decision. I think things will be lined up soon.
All right. Captain Amit Singh, how prevalent is this? In fact, let me bring in Kabir Malik on this. Kabir Malik, you said that you know this particular pilot, and you have also come out earlier on our shows to say that you've known several pilots who have consumed drugs. Why is that? Why is this so prevalent?
See, I don't know why this culture is in industry actually. I just said it in my few of interviews also already. I don't want to repeat now because it would be a big controversy. But I know this man many times. I met him many times in different airports. I saw always he's in toxic mood. So the
toxic mood means he's high.
Yeah, he's all the time. All the time I saw him. Even I just met him in Dubai also in a party. He was there completely uncontrollable. Some of fellows they took him to the hotel also. Next early morning he has flight. So it was
the next morning he flew.
Yeah. So he did it. So why the system they ignored this kind of activities of the pilots really shockingable, and why our this BA and this dope tests are so lenient? I don't know really. Because in the Gulf country, we'll see they are very strict towards of such these kind of activities of their, not for the pilots, even for their citizens also. That's why you can say so much control.
But if Gulf countries are so strict, you just said he flew out of Dubai when he was high. Why wasn't he caught there?
But I don't know. It was in the he was inside the bar, and they allowed. They have license over there. It's a different kind of debate issue. We'll just talk some other time. But what my suggestion is this: if there's some strictness is there in the doping test or the BA test, definitely we can control such these kind of activities. It will not be happening in aviation industry. Why? Because if this dope test is compulsory for everyone within 14 days or 2 times in 2 weeks, that would be very good idea for the aviation industry. Because if some person consume drugs within 10 days, it will be catchable, or we find out that what kind of drugs.
I mean it doesn't have to be every day. It can be even weekly because the drugs stay. And Captain Amit Singh, come in on this. How many of these pilots? He says that he has seen several such pilots who consume drugs, so on and so forth. How many of them are doing it to escape the BA test?
Well, this is another way of escaping because of the periodicity or the sample rate at which these tests happen. But the issue is larger. It is a society which has a problem. And it was identified in a 2019 study by the Social Justice and Empowerment Ministry that after alcohol, the next big problem in the society is drugs. And since aviation is also going to be affected because we're the same people, there has to be a multi-pronged strategy. Not one strategy alone will work, like testing. That is why the car also has, and IQ also recommends that first is education, then you have peer groups, and third and fourth and last is testing. IQ and all other countries do not talk about punishment for drugs. They say that your rules have to be harmonized with the policies of the state. So whatever are the national policies, they have to be in harmonization.
Right.
Which means alcohol cannot be separate, drugs separate, and what the government is following is totally different.
Right.
So there has to be some consistency because people are coming from the society.
Right.
So it is not specific to aviation. It is en masse and it transgresses to other industries as well.
Right.
So the problem, again, the next problem is the institutions and the fragility of the system. Every time there's a pressure on the system, it collapses. So an accident does not happen out of the blue. There are always telltale signs. That is why Airbus has asked for data for 6 months of this aircraft, that how was it being maintained. So they want to see what is the maintenance culture prevalent in the airline and what is the oversight from the regulator. In Air India 171, again, we have seen that it is not an ordinary case when a fuel control switch goes to cut off. So there is a systemic problem that we are not able to identify because we don't have well-trained manpower. DGCA is well short of it. They have admitted, and the parliamentary statement says they're about 23% less ramp checks and other checks that they have carried out. And these could be a part of those checks which were missed out.
All right. Why don't you come in on this? Mr. Rawat, is DGCA well short of the manpower, trained manpower? Some trained manpower is there, but in terms of the total requirement, is DGCA sufficient? Even AAIB questions have been raised, whether it has the kind of infrastructure, enough manpower to conduct the number of investigations that it needs to conduct, given India's size and scale.
DGCA carries out the oversight over the airlines, which is through their inspections, through the surveillance inspection or this audit checks. So they have got now they set out this thing, they had to carry out this much number of the audits or this thing during this year. So whatever they do as per their requirement only. Now, sometimes the requirement is more. Suppose that now breath analyzer increase or this drug test has to be increased. Now there has to be increased the number of the DGC has to increase the number of surveillance to ensure that airlines are doing this kind of jobs. So these kind of things are, but
the law came in 2022.
DGCA does the inspection for the oversight of the airline.
Correct.
But as per Captain Amit Singh has said that who is to check this thing switches problem? It is by the airline only, not by the DGCA.
Yeah, when it comes to switches, a different problem. But when this mandatory testing of drugs is concerned, DGCA has to ensure that airlines are doing it. And in fact, why don't you come in on this, Wing Commander Panikar? Are the airlines actually doing this?
I just wanted to say one more thing. Because in this 21 car on the drug test, it says that airline has to develop their systems for carrying out the checks. After that, it's silence.
That's the problem. Because then who's checking the airlines?
That is nothing has happened.
The DGCA is supposed to be checking the airlines. Are the airlines complying with this 10% car requirement? We don't know. Because suddenly Air India brings out, as Mr. Cherian just said, 3,000 pilots being tested overnight. Why these snap-jerk, knee-jerk reactions? What have we been doing the last 4 years?
Okay, Madhav, first and foremost, the breathalyzer is 100% for all flights.
Of course.
Domestic flights before you fly, and international flights if pre-flight breathalyzer is not available on the first port of call in India, wherever it be. The pilots and the cabin crew will have to go for breathalyzer. So that is 100%. As far as the drug testing is concerned, there are a few inaccuracies in this. This is it comes under the safety car series 5. There are, I think, 6 drugs which are being tested for. Basically the metabolites of all those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now the car is the law. Do keep in mind, ICAO will give you a recommendation. ICAO has got 193 countries. Okay, it can give you a SARP, the standards and recommended practices. The standards have to be adopted one way or the other. Recommended practices depend upon the local conditions. If it needs to be modified, it can be changed or it can be rejected outright, right? So what gets applicable in India, for example, would be a SARP on safety, which becomes law via the car under the Aircraft Rules and Aircraft Act.
Okay, but it's there. We have a car.
Yeah. So the car has recommended, the car, mind you, is law, has recommended a 10% screening. Now, nowhere in the car has it says that you got to ramp it up to 15% every year or 20% or anything.
No, the car actually says in 2022 that we'll ramp it up. It says that.
The car says that in due course, pre-flight medical will be carried out, and the airlines are supposed to improve their infrastructure, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So what the important part is that whatever the car is there, regulation is not the ceiling. It is the floor.
It is the
you
floor,
have
exactly.
to perform
you
over
can
and
perform
above.
more. And I think Dilip Cherian, this is
our culture
a
is such
typical
that
case.
performance.
The government is saying it's the regulator saying it's the law is there. The airlines say the law is not specific, and basically nobody is going to bell the cat.
The idea is,
you can respond to.
The idea is that, in fact, in every industry, the problem is this. The law, as you know, besides being an ass, is always slow to catch up. So you are talking about an industry which is in rapid transition. Unfortunately, we don't have enough airlines in India, so you're reduced as far as domestic choices are concerned. But globally, there are practices which should be considered as best practices, and unlike in a bureaucratic system where you take the best from every single country and make it absolutely inoperable, you have a sensible option to look at a bunch of things, and now this is a huge wake-up call, and I hope that we will see action instead of waiting for some committee to come up with some long-winded and unacceptable proposition that companies move first and then government comes up with regulations which match what companies show as their commitment to the consumer and to the passenger.
I certainly hope that happens soon. So, Mr. Shriram, would you like to assure our viewers?
As Captain said, that they always have a mandatory pre-flight test for BA. Do they have a post-flight test after international flight?
Yes.
They could.
No.
For international, they do.
We don't find every time for Air India, especially.
If it's not tested upon departure, then it's tested upon arrival for international. I believe that's the protocol. Is that not?
That's correct.
That's correct.
So even and there's like smoke alarm in the cockpit, in the aft galley. Why? This is a big question, because most of the time there are a lot of complaints which we had received earlier where the pilots are smoking in cockpit. And no one can deny that thing, because that's a fact, because there are a lot of cabin crew had tweeted that on the social media and lost a job also on that. So that's definitely there will be a policy soon.
The smoking can be tobacco also. That's
it
not.
Can be a marijuana also.
It can be, of course.
Of course, that's what, because now we found the positive, so definitely have to be tested, and there should be definitely a policy by the airlines. Definitely government will come with the policy.
Okay, Captain Amit Singh.
People and the managers are not understanding that the whole safety system works under the safety management system. So there is a system in place which identifies threats and then formulates mitigation plans, new procedures, policies. There's a feedback, and then it's a continuous circle. So the airline is supposed to run the SMS, and the buck stops at DGCA. DGCA is supposed to monitor and what is the acceptable level of risk. So airline may say that this level of risk is acceptable. Now they have to give a number. DGCA might look at the other airlines and say, no, this is not acceptable. So if there is fatigue amongst pilots are dying, the safety management system has to pick it up and do a risk analysis. If they're getting reports from the cabin crew that pilots are smoking, so that safety management system has to work. So that system is failing. So we are addressing the symptom, not the root cause.
We are not addressing the root cause. I think that's a very important message going, that we're not addressing the root cause. And this entire episode, of course, the technical failures apart, when it comes to testing as far as drugs are concerned, it's a huge wake-up call. And that's why the story has been so shocking. We are debating it almost every day for the last 1 week. And we are going to continue to do that. It's a campaign that we're running here at Times Now, because we deserve safe skies. All right, quick, 20 seconds. We're out of time. 20 seconds only.
Because you have spoken that there are countries where these drugs are allowed. So airlines have to do the safety assessment.
Correct.
That where the pilots are staying in those countries, they have to carry out the test on the priority basis.
But DGCA must crack the whip on those airlines, as you normally do when it comes to safety
Hardly
issues.
I take 10 seconds only. So I would like to suggest one thing that about regarding this B and dope test. Even airlines also fail and DGC also fails.
Everybody has failed. The problem is, sir, everybody has failed. Pilots have also failed. Everybody has failed. The point is now, what is the solution? Will we have a strict law? Can we afford to have a pilot who is high in the sky flying an aircraft that costs about 800, 900 crores? I think that's a question that we all need to ask as members of the flying public. Mr. J.S. Rawat, Dr. Sumit Sushrilan, Captain Amit Singh, Wing Commander Sharad Panikar, Captain Kabir Malik and Dilip Cherian, thanks so much for joining us on this edition of the National Debate.